Welcome to the Entrepreneur Gene. I'm your host, Laurie Barkman. Each week, we'll hear from founders and CEOs to explore key decisions they've made for growth, value creation, and challenges along the way. This show is sponsored by the Business Transition Sherpa, offering entrepreneur advisory services from transition to transaction. Don't forget to hit subscribe, follow us for the latest episodes, and visit thebusinesstransitionsherpa.com for more exclusive content. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Entrepreneur Gene. I'm Laurie Barkman. I am thrilled to have my guest today. He is a family business entrepreneur, successfully leading 2 companies in the fencing services industry. He's recently launched a software as a service company, leveraging all of the knowledge he's built as CEO at JC Fence, and he is the founder of Elite Technique. Welcome, Matt Chiaradonna.
Thank you very much, Laurie. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Oh, you're so welcome. Matt, right out of the gates, first question for you. Is there an entrepreneur gene, and what does it mean to you?
I would have to say yes, Laurie. I believe that there is an entrepreneurial gene. My family, as you've already alluded to, has been entrepreneurs since 1970. We started JC Fence in 1972, so kind of followed in the footsteps of watching my grandfather and then my father live that entrepreneurial life, out late looking at appointments, all day working, taking us with them to the job sites, to the shops, sweeping the ground at 3 or 4 years old to get 50 cents or whatever it was they were going to give me that day. So I definitely think that a lot of the reason why I do what I do is just having watched them work so hard and see the rewards and freedom that come with it. Also the hard and turbulent times as well. But that definitely seems to have instilled in me that entrepreneurial gene that you're asking about.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from people who are in family businesses when they see generation 1, generation 2, in some cases it's more than that, in some cases it's less. But there's something important. There's something that you picked up on. What do you think that was, if you could describe it in kind of a emotional standpoint?
I think that really the emotional part for it was just having control or ability to set your own destiny. I had 2 family grandfathers, which I was so lucky to have. Both of them were complete polar opposites. My grandfather on the entrepreneurial side, very much, working for himself all the time, where my other grandfather had that steady job, that steady paycheck, very less risk taking. And I did see that he did have some freedoms, but not nearly the freedoms that my other grandfather had. He made his own hours. He was his own boss. Sometimes that meant he had to work harder than other people did, but it always meant that he was in charge of his own destiny and wasn't reliant on anybody else. And seeing that is, I guess, addicting to a point where it's like, I don't know if I could be out of control where I have to be where I'm told whenever I'm supposed to be there. And so watching that, watching my grandfather do that, and I guess the other side is when it's built with your own hands or with your own will, it felt a little more I felt like it was a little bit more of my own success than somebody else doing it for me. So it all kind of went into me saying, even though they didn't want me to, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to follow in those footsteps.
Well, let's pull on that thread. They didn't want you to go into the family business?
Oh no, no, it was very much talked about when I was younger that I was to go to school and get good grades and make sure that I could go to college and get that college education. They didn't want me to stress out about payroll at the end of the week. They didn't want me to stress out about the long, cold winters when there wasn't any rents to put up and, customers complaining, all that stuff that they had gone through that to them, they felt like maybe was the hard part of the business. They were trying to protect me from that. And they wanted me to have more of that safe lifestyle and just was never really something I wanted, but they certainly pushed for that.
They pushed for it because they, from a financial standpoint, they said, "Hey, this is feast or famine as a business owner, particularly in your line of business," as you said, in the winter when you're not installing fences. And for our audience, what part of the country are you in?
So I'm from the Boston, Massachusetts area up there in the Northeast. So yeah, we certainly get that, or at least we used to get that 3 months of winter where you could get 60 inches of snow and not putting up much fence when the ground's frozen and there's snow on top of it.
No, absolutely not. And so you're a little bit of a rebel. Your family's telling you to go a certain direction, to do a certain thing, and but yet there was a pull for you to do something else. Tell me a little bit more about why you chose the path of following in the family business footsteps and how ultimately that came together.
Sure. So fence was always in my passion ever since I was little. I would be outside digging holes. I have pictures of me in diapers that people laugh at me like, "Oh, you're joking." I was actually wearing diapers, digging holes. So I liked working with my hands. I like to see that end product at the end of the day. I'm a people person. I really like the estimating process where you'd go out and meet with the customers and understand all their desires. And then you could craft that perfect backyard for them. And that really gave me that sense of feeling accomplished. So when they were trying to pull me away from it, they were winning. What happened with me was that unfortunately there was a pretty bad accident in my family. My father, when I was 14 years old, got in a really bad car accident. He was hit by a car, and it really took their power away, and it gave me all the power. My dad was out of the picture. My grandfather was in retirement, and someone needed to run the business. Now I was too young to run it by myself, but my grandfather was retired and not really wanting to run it on his own. So him coming back into the play, it really left a void where someone needed to step in if the company was going to continue. And so it kind of gave me the in. They say everything happens for a reason. And it seems to be that that was the reason for it all. That's what let me stay within the business.
Wow, and so I'm sorry to hear about your father's accident. Was he able to still be a mentor to you kind of outside the business?
No, unfortunately, not to be sad on the podcast, but yeah, so he was hit by a car as a pedestrian. The car was going fairly fast and he broke all the bones in his body, had brain damage pretty severely. He went into a coma for quite some time. They said he wouldn't wake up. He did. They said he wouldn't walk. Kind of did, but he was never the same again. With that brain damage, he was really a pale comparison of who he used to be. We took care of him and kept him going as long as we could until he finally passed away. But he was not, unfortunately, able to mentor me much. It was my grandfather, his father, who really mentored me in the business.
Wow, yeah, that is a real devastating situation, and it's amazing that your grandfather was able to come back and had the interest in kind of coming back, and then you had a skip level type of gap there in the organization. Was there a key leader who helped run in the interim?
So it's a funny story. My mother was not really terribly in the business, but enough, typical family business. She would do the books and all that type of stuff. She stepped in as well. So she was helping a lot with the finances and the books. And my grandfather was really running the operation. So I would say she was really the step in point that kind of helped save the business. I wasn't there every day. She was. I'd have 2 hours in the afternoon after school. She had all day. So I guess it was really her and my grandfather as the mix. Outside of the family, there really weren't at that time any key employees or team members that could step up. We weren't really big enough. They hadn't really run the business that way yet. They were still doing a lot of everything themselves at that point.
Gotcha. So there's kind of a school of hard knocks when it comes to running a business. As you said, you didn't want to choose the path of going to college and kind of following that track. You wanted to go into the business and you did. When we think about entrepreneurship, we can learn it by doing, we can learn it by, you know, going to class and having others, sort of teach us the way. You had the ultimate mentor, your grandfather. If you were going to describe to other entrepreneurs something that you might teach now that you've had all these lessons in your career as an entrepreneur and working with your grandfather, what are those things that you would teach?
Biggest takeaway for me, watching my grandfather, watching other entrepreneurs, even myself in my early days, if I could go back and teach somebody brand new now, I would ask them to build the company to run doing the jobs that you like the least earlier, right? A lot of entrepreneurs really love to hold on to every aspect of that job. And that gets in the way of running a business. It gets in the way of growth and building a business. Going backwards, the reason why there wasn't that person there was because my grandfather didn't want to let go of anything. He wanted to do everything himself. So there wasn't any key people built to help when help was needed. When I first got the business, I was trying to be proving everybody wrong. Hey, you didn't want me to do this, but watch, I can do it better than anybody, right? So I wanted to do everything myself, but we didn't grow. We didn't grow key people. The company itself didn't grow. Once I finally got other mentors who had let go and had built a real company, that would be the first thing I said, oh man, there's that light that I was waiting for. That's what I was doing wrong all that time. So I would go back and teach people that let go of that earlier. I'm not saying hire out when you don't have the money to hire out. No, don't do that. But as soon as you can replace yourself in a job, particularly ones that you're not the best at, that would be what I would go back and teach people. Look for that as fast as possible.
Yeah, I've heard that so often that people, in hindsight, they wish that they had handed off more things sooner. And there's this kind of stubbornness sometimes because I know that I had to do it best, or I really enjoy it and this is what I love doing. I don't want to let it go. Do you think that for you, if you were going to go back in time or if you were going to teach a way to do it, would it be more of that mindset that's really the key thing? Or is it a process, focus, and orientation, or some combination maybe of these things?
It's definitely a combination of the two. So we didn't really have processes set in place, so it made it harder to hand things up because we didn't know how to tell them what to do because we had always done it ourselves. So learning that putting processes into place was a key piece for me to step out of that level. And that then, just like you said, the second part, especially in a hands-on service industry, is you looked at the job with the customer and you promised them something. You then bought the materials, maybe even built the materials and brought them to the job site. You were there when the fence was going up. So you have this communication with the customer. And at the end, you really know that they're going to be happy. The job's going to stand up for a long time. It's easy to stand behind your reputation that way. A lot of people who really love that, they feel very uncomfortable turning that over to anybody else because they feel like, oh, the customers won't want me anymore because they wanted me. The customers won't like the finished product anymore because it isn't me. And so I felt that a lot at the beginning too, but then you realize that there are people out there that are actually far better than you at a lot of that stuff. And it took me creating the processes first, which would allow those people to step into those places. And then they blew me away with how much better than they did at it than me. And I said, wow, why did I spend so many years thinking that this wasn't possible when it was very possible?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I want to ask you a challenge question. So many entrepreneurs are facing different challenges. I'm sure you are. What are the ones that you would describe as the biggest or the ones keeping you up at night?
Sure. The biggest challenge that we have had at our company is developing leaders. This isn't just a brand new problem. This is a problem that we've had for a long time. Even once we did create the processes, even once we did create the ability for them to see their path at our company, we'll start off here. This is how we get our raises and we get to these levels. It's very difficult for us to bring people in that are true leaders or entrepreneurs who really want to drive the company for us. Most of the time, these people are relying on direction. They're relying on what's the next step told to me and they're not really looking to lead, take that next step. And so we've been really challenging ourselves to try to find ways to help grow our team that we've had for a long time. Plus, also kind of look elsewhere for the types of people with the right personalities that can come in and drive growth without needing us to drive the growth for them. And so that's been a really big challenge for us as we've hit those ceilings of growth to say, okay, well, we've gotten to this point and we've had to do it all by us leading. How can we get higher? Well, we're kind of strapped at how much we can lead at this point. We really need some more team members that want that growth to take it. And that's where we've had our hardest time over the last half a dozen years of trying to find those leaders to help us break through that next barrier.
Do you believe that there's opportunity for growth and developing your people into those key leaders, or do you see it more as new blood, new ideas, and hiring in from outside?
Well, it's such a good question that you ask, and we play around the circle over and over again. So I love my team. I love them to death. We follow the level 10 traction method of right person, right seat, right person, wrong seat. We try to play those games all the time. My people are amazing, but they're self-admittedly not leaders. And they tell me very often that, man, Matt, that's just not me. I'm not the one that's going to stay up late at night to go figure out how we're going to drive that, but I'm good at doing what you tell me to do. So for us, it's possibly going to come from some internal growth. We have younger people who are coming up the ranks that haven't been there for as long as my current leaders that might have some more entrepreneurial ambition, and we're working on them to see if we can get them there. We're trying to grow the leaders that we have to see if maybe there is a spark there that they just didn't recognize in themselves. But we're for the first time now, honestly, this year, really starting to look outside of our company where we wouldn't do that before. Our again, industry is very stubborn. They're very pig-headed. They don't like change. So if they've been there for 18 years, the idea of somebody brand new coming in, telling them what to do that hasn't put in that 18 years, they're not going to react very well to that. But unfortunately, if they're not going to lead from within, at some point we are going to have to make that decision. But yeah, we're really looking a lot this year at what's that next key hire? What does that key hire look like? And that's going to have to be somebody that can lead the charge to the next threshold.
So, what's a piece of advice that you would give to a CEO who's facing some of these similar challenges?
I guess again, open-mindedness, right? Finding the mentor who's done it before, finding the people around you who have already succeeded in breaking through those thresholds, not thinking that you have to be prideful and figure out everything all on your own. Get yourself involved in groups like EO, entrepreneurial groups. Be around people who have already succeeded with what you're trying to accomplish. Ask them for experience shares, see how they did it, what was their happy points, what was their bad points, and mesh your own path, mesh your own plan together. But don't think that you have to do it all by yourself. Think that there are people way smarter than us out there and use them to your advantage. And so that would be what I would suggest.
If you love the insights on this show, you'll love the insights I share in my book, written for entrepreneurs like you who are building with your exit in mind. Take the next step in your business journey to make your business more scalable and valuable. Head on over to btsherpa.com/book to grab your free digital copy of the Business Transition Handbook. Or you can also click the link in the show notes, btsherpa.com/book. You've got a real passion for the fencing industry. What excites you about the future of what you're working on?
So the biggest excitement for me in my fence industry right now is the growth available to our industry. So we as an industry have not always grown with the pack. We don't really use technology to our advantage as far as office goes. We're not always adapting the newest technologies when it comes to installation techniques. And there's really been a revolution since COVID with people online, people teaching, getting a whole bunch of new academies out there and the software space that I got into, right? So that software as a service that you spoke about, I created a company called Elite Technique that basically allows a fence company to have a SaaS product specifically designed for a fence company. There really aren't very many people in my space right now, and there's really nobody out there looking to do it. And I'm super excited to be able to bring what I've learned over my, couple of decades. It's funny to say that now, but over my couple of decades of running a fence company, I've learned a lot of the hard ways and I've put those into this technology. And there are other people that are doing the same thing. So I'm really excited to see these newer, younger 20 to 30-year-old entrepreneurs come into a place where they have so many advantages that I didn't have when I came into the space. And so I'm really looking forward to this next decade where a newer entrepreneur can come in without all those roadblocks that we had. And they're going to have a much easier path to success, a much easier path to growth. And I'm excited to hopefully be on the forefront of being able to be a mentor for some of those people, help them to have an easier launching pad than I did.
This is so cool. I just want to kind of pause for a moment. So you have a traditional business, right? It's a services business. We can all get our head around it. You're installing fencing, you're designing and installing fencing in residential settings, correct? Is that a good summary?
Correct.
And in doing so, you have recognized some challenges of the industry in running that business and as an entrepreneur and as an owner. And then you created a software product that helps address some of those challenges. Boom, right? Drop the mic. That's awesome. I just want to say that's awesome. There are so many technologists who create cool tech and then they have to go try to find the application of it. You've come at it from the solving pain points angle, which is really, really important. So it just for anyone listening, whether you have a service business, whether you have a product business, this is so important to just recognize that your product or service, the more clear you are what pain you're solving and who you're solving it for, is the starting point. And so, Matt, just to kind of spotlight that for you, that's what you're doing. I'm so excited to learn more about Elite Technique in this conversation and off air as well. I know it's fairly new. It's about a year old. Is that right?
Yeah, we started selling the product in June of 2023. So we're ticking in on that year and a half now of actually selling the product to other consumers.
Okay. Yeah, so you're a startup. How about that?
I am.
You're not many people can say they're a 3rd gen family business leader and running a SaaS software startup, so you've got it both. That's pretty cool. Well, this is amazing. So we've learned a lot about you. Appreciate you sharing, about your background. And now I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to learn, more from you and more about your story. So let's talk about that. A little more about your origin story. You shared a few things about the little you, right? Some of those key moments that you had. But what do you think are some of those things that shaped you in becoming the entrepreneur that you are today?
Absolutely, yeah. So I was a pretty typical suburban kid. I grew up in Peabody, Massachusetts. My dad was from Chelsea. His dad was a firefighter and an entrepreneur. My mother had family from Ohio who met with an Italian woman from Boston. So my grandfather was in the Navy. So I did come up with a lot of the military type background of being polite, paying attention to your elders, keeping your neat and organized paths, while at the same time watching my dad and my grandfather run a company. I spent a lot of my childhood playing sports, always outside, typical 90s kid, right? Outside playing stickball or foursquare or home run derby with the neighborhood kids. I was a big baseball player. I really liked baseball a lot. So at a younger age, I started playing travel baseball. So I was, 3 days a week practice, double headers, Saturday, Sunday. So that work ethic thing always kind of came pretty easy. It was always part of my day to day. I spent a lot of my time, like I said, kind of tagging along with my dad. A lot of my core memories as a kid were being at the workshop and him telling me to sweep the floor, but I didn't want to sweep the floor. I wanted to build panels and said, well, we all sweep the floor to start. You can build panels when you're good at sweeping the floor. And wasn't good at sweeping the floor, so I had to sweep the floor. I would go out on the road with him if he would look at jobs with customers, and I was the cute kid that he tagged along to make sales probably. But, it was fun for me. Snow removal, I'd go out with him in the wintertime, and I can vividly remember one storm where his plow broke, and it was probably a foot of snow. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was ready to go home. I'm like, well, the plow broke, Dad. That's your excuse. We don't have to go finish these lots because the plow broke, right? We can go home. And he's like, no, that's not how that works, Matt. No, we are going to the shop and we're going to fix the plow and we're going to hold true to our commitments. We're going to go fix them. And I remember him in the cold and the snow underneath the truck all by himself, fixing that truck so that we could go back out there and we stayed up and finished all those accounts. So a lot of those kind of core memories as being a kid, that's what brought me up, kind of what made me who I am today, kind of gave me the grit, even though I came from that kind of soft suburban area. I still kind of saw some of that grit. And yeah, so that was me growing up as a kid. And then come 14, as I mentioned, everything happened and I went to work. Every day after school, I was at that fence company. My summer vacations were at that fence company. I kind of put the sports aside, probably for the better. I wasn't that good anyways. But but yeah, so then after that, business has shaped my life from 14 until today. I've pretty much spent every waking moment and sleeping moment, as you know, as an entrepreneur, having dreams at night about what I'll do the next day, worrying about work. So yeah, that's me. That's kind of how I came up and was raised.
I love it, and it ties back nicely to my opening question to you about the entrepreneur gene and so many of the traits that you've probably inherited and then traits that you've observed and traits that were instilled in you from your family, as you were saying, the discipline, the grit, the determination, the focus, and the steadfastness of it all, whether it's coming from your grandfather, coming from your dad, and eventually coming from you as your own traits and the things that you've picked up. Now I love that, and I have a lot of respect for that determination. So that's really amazing. If you could go back in time, Matt, and ask yourself or give yourself some entrepreneurial advice, what would that advice be, and at what point in time?
Man, there's so many things that I would go back and tell myself, but I think that the biggest thing I would say may even be recent, right? It's that really knowing what you want. I said all those things about myself. Sounds like I'm so great. I have so many negative flaws too. We all do as humans. We all do as entrepreneurs. One of mine is that sometimes I chase that shiny object a little bit. And so I get good at something, I get a little bored at it, and it makes me chase something else down. Some of those things have really paid off for me, and other things have set me back, and I could be a lot further in my business. Think if I could go back, I would really have told myself, "Hey, slow down to go fast later. Really sit there and think about what it is that you want. What would make you happy? What would be your inevitable goal, and let's really focus on that. And instead of kind of getting distracted by all the possibilities of things and not giving anything my true focus. So I would say that if I could go back and teach myself something, it's probably like 10 years ago me, and it's slow down, think about what will make you happy, choose that, and then put all your energy into that instead of trying to be the man of many tricks.
That is a great insight. And the next thing I want to talk about, Matt, is purpose. A lot of times I find in my work working with business owners is that the purpose is the business, right? And vice versa. It's sort of consuming with identity and what they're focused on. So I want to learn a little bit about purpose with you. Do you have a sense of purpose inside the business, outside the business? Are they the same? Are they different?
Have it in both inside and outside of the business, and it is really just a legacy, right? So both in my business and with my family. So I have three daughters, a 9 year old, an 8 year old, and a 4 year old daughter. I have a wife, I'm married. For them and for my industry, I just really want to do everything I can to make my industry better, to make it easier for entry, easier for training, easier to build types of service businesses in the fence specific area. Right. My whole family has been lucky enough to take care of 3 generations, hopefully going on 4 generations of family with this industry, and I wanna give back. I know it sounds a little cliche, but I really do. I'm part of the American Fence Association. I'm a president of the Northeast chapter, and I serve on the national board. I really wanna leave a legacy that I've improved my business, I've improved my industry, and that I've done it for my family, right? I want my kids to see that same hard work and grit and determination that I saw growing up. I want to instill that into them so that when it's their turn to come up the ranks, whether they work for somebody else, they run their own business or run one of my businesses, I want to leave that legacy that, dad wanted us to act this way, to behave this way, to have this sense of commitment to these things. And so really that's what drives me every day is to just kind of get better, grow and instill that into the people around me, whether it's the family or it's the industry.
I love it. Are any of your daughters showing interest in what dad does at work?
My oldest daughter and I are like the bestest of friends in the whole world. So we're like inseparable at all times. I love all my kids equally, as you can imagine, but she just really takes to me. She'll sit with me when I do demos and she'll learn about the software. She wants to do inputting for the software. She's, constantly looking at like, how can I code for kids? And she plays softball every single day and I coach her at softball. So she shows a ton of interest in it. My middle daughter, Gabriella, is the boss of the family, right? So she is like the one that tells everybody what she's got that entrepreneurial spirit. Adriana, she's a little bit shy. She's smart, super calculated, should be good, but man, that Gabby, she wants to be a babysitter, but I don't know if she knows it yet. She could be the boss of everything. But the baby's little, she's 4, she's got her own little personality coming around. But yeah, the oldest says it, the middle one doesn't, but I see it in the middle one. The middle one's she's a killer. She's ready. She could go out there and run a business tomorrow, I think. Sell some
That's
lemonade or
awesome.
I don't know.
I don't know. 20 years from now, we're going to come back on the show and we're going to have that conversation and we'll say, hey. So in terms of life outside of work and things that are pulling you forward and that purpose we talked about and creating that legacy, what do you do for fun? Are you still doing some of that sports? You're coaching. You mentioned you're coaching.
Yeah, it's passed on now. Yep, I'm a big baseball guy, I always have been, so a big passion of ours is the Red Sox. So my family and I, we spend a lot of time at Fenway Park taking in Red Sox game. We watch the games together at night, me and the oldest. Um, Also, I coach, right? So I coach softball for my oldest and my youngest. So I'm at the facilities a lot, instilling that, we got to work hard, we got to get better, we got to pay attention to detail stuff. So yeah, it's still definitely wrapped a lot around sports. Um, I guess outside of that, yeah, I mean, I have some hobbies in my yard. I have a garden. I love gardening. So I'm a vegetable guy. So I have a really good sized vegetable garden in my backyard that every year I'll turn over in the spring and then do a fall crop as well. So I've got that green thumb a little bit. And last, I'd say we do a lot at the lake. We love water. So my family and I go up to Lake Ossipee a lot. We spend a lot of time on the boat, swimming by the campfire, doing s'mores and all that stuff. So that's what occupies the bulk of my time when I'm not worried about work.
Oh, that's awesome. And if you weren't working as much as you are, um, Where do you think you would put your time?
Wow, good question. You put me on the spot with that. I guess it would be family, right? I mean, it really would. When I do have my free time, we're always looking for something to do. We're looking for a road trip to go on. We're looking for a new experience to have. Again, they love the water. They love to swim. They love being by the beach. So if it was a perfect world and I could spend my time anywhere I wanted to, we would probably be beach bums and just bounce around from beach to beach and build sandcastles and watch the tide go out.
Oh, I love that. There's a nice piece to that. And it really tracks well with kind of the whole team building nature, some of the ways you described your team earlier, too. Seems to be a family culture. Family is really important to you. Matt, thank you so much for coming on. I want to kind of switch gears and just let the audience know if people want to reach out to you, learn more about you, what's a good way for them to do that?
Absolutely. So we are using social media like everybody else. So JC Fence is on Facebook. They're also on Instagram at JC Fence North Shore. My email is matt at jcfencenorthshore.com. So those are the easiest ways to reach me and talk to me. If it's in this software as a service space that you want to talk to me, you can still get me at those same avenues, but we have social media for Elite Technique as well. So anywhere on social media or my email, I'm always very quick to respond.
Perfect. And we'll put those links in the show notes as well. Well, I want to close out the show. Thank you so much, Matt, for coming on, sharing your experience about the entrepreneur gene and all the amazing things you're working on.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening. If this show is something that you enjoy, we hope that you'll like it, follow it, and also leave a rating and review. It helps others find the show as well. And also check out our YouTube channel. You can check us out on YouTube, thebusinesstransitionSherpa.com, for all of these videos, including today. This has been another exciting episode of The Entrepreneur Gene, and we'll see you next time. Hey, that's a wrap. This show is sponsored by the Business Transition Sherpa, working with entrepreneurs who want to escape feeling like a prisoner in their own business and to eventually let go flawlessly. If you loved today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And if you want to help support the Entrepreneur Gene, I'd encourage you to leave a rating and review. Ratings and reviews truly help our show grow and get in front of more entrepreneurs just like you. If you do leave a rating and review, we'll be so happy. Take a screenshot of it, send it to my email, Laurie at btsherpa.com, and we'll send you a free digital copy of my book, The Business Transition Handbook. And we'll also enter you to win one of our monthly swag boxes. For show notes, including links to everything in today's episode, be sure to visit btsherpa.com. Also, as a reminder, you can watch this full video interview on our YouTube channel for the Business Transition Sherpa. While you're there, be sure to check out videos from our award-winning podcast called Succession Stories. We'll see you next time on The Entrepreneur Gene.